Well, today we have the pleasure of hearing from David Genovese. David Genovese, who is right here to my left, is responsible for all of this dust, noise, and confusion over here. The whistles that go off every now and then, followed by a little shake of the building. But he's here to talk about Corbin. I've been with him how many years now?
Almost 20.
Representing
18
David
years.
in the zoning aspect of the Corbin project. And we finally see something happening on the ground. So without wasting any more time, David, why don't you
All right, great.
take over and let everyone
Thank you.
know what you're doing.
Thanks, Bob. So what Bob didn't tell you is he's really the brains of the operation. So when we come up with these good ideas, Bob's been working with us, to figure out from a zoning point of view how to craft it, how to create it. And the reason we love working with Bob so much is that, he won't just take on any assignment. He takes on things he really believes in. And so we try to make sure, having grown up here, that this was really going to fit in well and take Darien forward, but be respectful of the past. And so it's been a long and arduous journey, and yeah, we're pretty happy to be starting, and it is kind of nice. I think this is like the first presentation I've made in a long time where people were together and like not, spread out. So I'm really grateful to be here with you all today. I definitely see some new faces too. I've presented to this group before, but it's great to see also some new faces and old faces and new faces, long-standing faces, I should say, and new people to town. So let me take you through this. This is really our presentation that we give to retailers. This is right now our focus has been on the retail, the restaurants, and the fitness. And primarily the restaurants and the fitness tenants, because those are the tenants whose space construction really requires a lot of extra engineering and work to get the soundproofing right. We built the building at 1020 Post Road across the parking lot. And in doing that, we had to take great care to make sure that if 1020 Post was a successful restaurant, people would still want to rent the office space above or live above, because if you don't get that engineering right from the very beginning, you can't really rent the buildings, at least to the kinds of tenants that you want. Imagine being above, a really loud restaurant or exercise studio, and you hear the bass bumping, on your phone call with an important client. So this is a presentation that really we've used to kind of set the table and focus upon the restaurants and the fitness, which are also longer lead time, because that also we believe will drive a lot of what happens in the desirability of the apartments that we're going to build and the office space that we're building. This is a slide that just shows some of the various projects that my partner Penny Glassmeyer and I have been a part of. I'm going to repeat some things that maybe some of you have heard, just because seem to be a lot of new faces. Am I reading that right? There's a bunch of different folks in here than when I did this last time. Penny Glassmeyer is a long-standing resident of Darien. Her son Ward was one of my best friends growing up, literally from Tokenique School. She got together with Bob ages ago, and she used to do a lot of single-family, high-end single-family residential. The town went to her in the mid-90s, I think it was, and pointed out this area behind the Sugar Bowl that was pretty blighted, and they wanted her to consider redeveloping that area. So they encouraged her. She bought 2 or 3 properties, came up with the plan for the Grove Street Plaza, really focusing upon like the physicality of it, not necessarily the tenants and who would go in there, but first, the buildings that, she's an artist. Like, she builds the highest quality homes in Tokenique. If you look up her website, pgproperties.biz, I think it is, you'll see some of the extraordinary homes that she's built. But she got the land assembled, she came up with a plan, and after they encouraged her to build it, ironically, the town tortured her for, I think, about 7 or 8 years in the zoning process. So she really was the pioneer. But ended up building what I think most would agree is a really beautiful place. And then I helped her over time re-tenant it and change the tenants from the original tenants, which were a jewelry store and a kids' clothing store, to Espresso Neat and now the bakery, which has really enlivened the place. Some of you know some people who spend a lot of time there, Mr. Cavanna. Some of you probably also spend a lot of time there, but it's really become a gathering place for the community, and that was happening long before COVID. And it's been really exciting. And our emphasis, with the leasing, given the fact that we live here, my parents live here, Penny lives here, like, we've always tried to figure out like what would be right. What do people really want? So we joke that we're sort of walking focus groups and asking people what they'd like to see here, what kinds of businesses. And the sense we've gotten over the years was that, Darien people didn't really want the downtown to become like a mall. Like if you look at Westport's Main Street or New Canaan's Elm Street, they really ended up getting populated by like the larger chains, the national stores, then in Greenwich, in the case of Greenwich Avenue, even like international stores that have really priced out the mom and pop businesses. And so Penny and I have always tried to figure out how to create a blend and with a leaning toward the local, leaning toward the mom and pop. So Flour, Water, Salt is run by Rob Van Kuren, who moved back here, but had grown up in Darien. Espresso Needs, run by local people. 1020 Post is owned by a family in Westchester that has 4 restaurants. We could have, when we worked with Bob on that project. That was a brownfield site that had been vacant since like 1964. I don't know if some of you even remember, but there was the old barber shop. Well, it was a barber shop and a dry cleaner. It became Gopher and the dry cleaner. And then there was an empty site where 1020 sits today. And literally it sat vacant for 40 years because people would try to figure it out and they go, oh, it's just too complicated. It's environmentally contaminated. The dry cleaner had done damage to the groundwater. And so we figured that out and we built 1020 Post, which sort of followed Grove Street Plaza. Penny finished Grove Street in '01. We finished 1020 Post in '08. Tom Golden and Arthur Collins had renovated the Playhouse building. So those 3 buildings kind of kicked it off. Penny really being the pioneer, and then the Dalsettis did the Brooks Brothers and the Darien Row 8 and Bank, and suddenly downtown was sort of starting to come alive. Bodega opened up. The Dalsettis had their restaurant, 1020 Post. Senna opened up. And it's amazing if you really look back over the years how many things have changed. But one of the things that we're really most proud of is that we hope, and we're trying our hardest, to like make sure that we give this place like texture and a little bit of local cool, not, all the chain stores. So, working with Bob and our other advisors, I'm going to just jump around for a second to go to the aerial. When we first started working on this project, this is where at the corner of Corbin Drive and the Post Road, this is where you had the Toy Box and the 10 Corbin 3-story office building. Back here is where the post office is. The original properties that we acquired were 10 Corbin and 30 Corbin, 33 Old Kings Highway South and 17 Old Kings Highway South. The original idea was really just to build this block from Corbin Drive to like where Fairbanks Photo was or where Green and Tonic is now. But as we got into it, kind of a hazard of what we do and the fact that we grew up here, we got kind of caught up in this idea of we can't build this beautiful project next to that old Bank of America building that's really past its prime. And we should try to figure out a way to incorporate that. So we started a dialogue with the Gibb family who owned the ground, the Bank of America people, Brud DeLuca, local builder who had a leasehold interest. It was a very complicated ownership situation. We started a dialogue to see if we could incorporate them into it. And Bank of America said, if you find us an alternative branch location, we'll work with you. They had a below market rent and they had a below market purchase option on the building. So this was like super complicated and big company. And maybe this is more than you want to know. Am I giving you more than you want to know? Because people kind of go, why did this take so long? I guess it's like a feeling of insecurity. I'm like, I want you to understand like how crazy it was. But it was crazy negotiating with the 3 of them. We knew when Chuck's Steakhouse became available for sale, because they were having a tough time, we knew that there was a quirk in the zoning regs that would allow us to put a bank branch over there. So actually, we bought Chuck's Steakhouse to put Bank of America there. And when they got to their final site selection committee meeting, which took like 4 months, it got rejected, even though they'd been telling us, yes, it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine. So that was kind of a dark day. But we had this alternative idea of Shake Shack. Actually, we had 3 choices: Shake Shack, Starbucks, or Chick-fil-A. Well, there were a lot of people who were like, you got to do Chick-fil-A. I love Chick-fil-A. It'd be great. I am so grateful every day we didn't, because have you guys ever been up there and seen like that? Could you imagine, like if we had put Chick-fil-A in there, we'd have gotten kicked out of town. I'm convinced. I mean, everybody loves Chick-fil-A, but it's bananas. And Shake Shack, again, in keeping with what we're also trying to do, which, candidly is another angle on it that I think most developers don't look at, but being a resident of the town and having a lot of friends and family in town, like I think it's important is to be honest. We're also looking at this always with a lens of what's going to be good for like residential property values in Darien. So when a young couple's thinking about moving out from New York and they come visit Greenwich, Westport, New Canaan, Darien, how are they going to view like the decisions that we made? So, you know, what we used to hear from brokers 15, 20 years ago when I first met Bob was that residential brokers had like a tour. They would kind of avoid downtown because it was so tired and, you know, dated looking relative to New Canaan or Westport. So we had great schools, we had an incredible library, we have beaches, we have beautiful homes, we have a great community, but our downtown relative to other downtowns wasn't great. So they would find a way to kind of circumvent the downtown. Now they can proudly take them to Flower Water Salt, you know, buy them a loaf of bread, you know, send them, you know, back to New York with a great loaf of sourdough bread, or they can take them to lunch at 1020 or Senna. And it's a totally different presentation. And that young family sees a Whole Foods and they love that. And they see a Shake Shack and they kind of identify with that. Danny Meyer in New York, who's probably the coolest human being I've ever met. And so, you know, the whole thing sort of works. And we try to think about this in that way. But the Bank of America folks rejected the Chuck Steakhouse, the now Shake Shack site. And they said, put us on the 1 yard line. And if you, the 5 yard line of downtown, if you can put us on the 5 yard line, we'll do it. So at the time we were looking at this corner, but they wanted a drive-through. And that would have destroyed our whole plan. So that led us to talking to Vinny at the gas station. I just have to ask this because I'm so curious. How many of you, and be honest, talked to Vinny about this project? Raise your hand. Yeah, it's like amazing. Vinny was like telling everybody until like the day before it closed, I'm not closing that deal with that guy. Like, I'm not doing this. And I would hear all this chatter. I'm like, and then of course in Darien, you have so many financially sophisticated people. Everybody had an opinion and nobody was afraid to like share it with Vinny. So like every once in a while, like the ideas that would come back to me were like, oh my God, you gotta, I wanted to like send him to a deserted island someplace and just like get him to just only talk to us because it was, you know, very complicated. But we went to Vinny and said, what if we could bring to you a long-term lease with Bank of America? We'll bring the financing, we'll do all the work, we'll build this building for you, you can own it, and we'll manage it for you. Would you like that? And he said, yeah, I think I'd like to do that. So Vinny is now like, you know, chilling out. He was in Florida for like 2 weeks. He misses you guys. He misses working on your cars, but he's very happy to be, you know, kind of more retired. That then led us down the other side of the street as our architect, Bruce Beinfield, who's super talented, said, so let me get this right. You focused on Bank of America. You figured out how to include that. You're getting rid of this gas station in the middle of your downtown. Gas station is not really the highest and best use for a property in the middle of downtown on the 50-yard line. And you're going to leave these single-story buildings that are not really that attractive, and you're going to have apartments that on the second and the third floor of those buildings, they're going to look out over those single-story buildings. You know, wouldn't it be better if we created a proper street, a pedestrian-friendly street, and just completed the whole project? And so, you know, I'm a glutton for punishment, so I said, okay, let's try. So that led us to negotiations with the Wyckoff family and the Tibbetts family, who own those other properties, who became our partners. So, you know, everything was going reasonably well. We got all our zoning approvals. I won't go through all that, but and then COVID struck. And we were supposed to pull all this together late last year. We got a little bit delayed because of COVID. The financing, getting our financing closed took a little bit longer. But, you know, as many of you know, probably all of you know, like the impacts of COVID, provided you stayed healthy and your family stayed healthy, there were some positive things that came out of the COVID situation for Darien, in that, you know, we had this mass in-migration, you know, and much increased in-migration of young families. I think I saw like 360 young families moved to town last year. You saw price rise, so people who probably had wanted to sell their home but were worried that there was no bid for their house, especially homes that were further away from town, where in the last few years there had been less interest, those houses had become pretty desirable. People had the opportunity to sell. And so you had that. Plus for us, we had tenants that historically wouldn't really consider Darien or Connecticut. So there are companies like Sweet Green Salad Company, which is a fun salad place that, you know, we had our eye on for a long time. They were not going to come to Connecticut. Now they're coming to Connecticut. They opened in Greenwich and they're going to open here. Kava, Chopped, Danny Meyer. Danny Meyer, had Shake Shack, but he would have not opened up another restaurant in Darien. But we're working with his team on a restaurant idea, a small casual restaurant idea for the project. So, this shows now the kind of scale of what we're doing. It's a 7-acre site in total. This is the site that brushes up against you. We're here. The idea, and this, again, was just a function of not honestly like initial insight and like a light bulb went off and we're like, that's how we have to do it. It was really more of a function of time and how this all played out. We have the plan to build the first 3 buildings, relocate Bank of America, and relocate all of our existing tenants, retail tenants. So, one of the things that we had committed to the town and we had committed to our tenants was that we would work with them and we wouldn't, kick them all out. I mean, some of them there was an agreement where we could knock the building down. They'd go on vacation for a couple of years. These are folks who are working as like a last chapter of their career. They're not feeding their family with the business. But there were some people who this is their livelihood and they can't be closed. We had obligations to relocate them once or twice if necessary. The crazy thing is that if you look around downtown Darien, there's really no vacancy. And so what's great is that, the landlords have been working together. The town has been great. The town government, Jamie Stevenson was amazing in leading the town, especially through COVID. They were flexible. The zoning commission's been a little more flexible, so helping us kind of work the right ideas. And we've been able to keep the buildings full, but that's a problem because I would have nowhere to relocate people. So the 2-phase project allows us to move everybody into these buildings. This we started, as you know, and you've heard and felt. That's kind of weird, but it's true. You felt the booming and the blasting. That's over now. We should open these retail spaces by November of next year. Move the retail over. If it's not by early November of next year, we're going to wait until January because we don't want to mess up their Christmas and holiday season. And then we would approach the 2nd phase and do this in one fell swoop. This is a view of the project. This is I-95. This is the exit ramp. Here is the existing Bank of America building. The idea is that we wanted to get people off the highway as quickly as we could, so we didn't create backups at the traffic light. So the idea is get people off and into the project as fast as we can. This is a structured parking garage with like 320 spaces above ground. There's one level of parking underground for the entire site here. There's one level of parking underground here. This building that's closest to Old Kings Highway, I'll call that the Tibbetts building. That's actually going to have just a slab-on-grade construction, so there'll be no basement. There'll be like a little park, like a great little park here that you guys can, if you want, go grab a bite to eat. It's called a bosque, like in landscaping parlance. It's a bosque with like beautiful trees and like a sitting area.
Where's
the park?
I'm sorry,
right
it's
here.
hard to see.
Yeah, this isn't really the landscaping plan, but on
No,
Old
the
Kings Highway.
pointer is not- it's
You
hard
can't
to
see it.
the pointer.
Yeah, right
Light.
here. Right here
Thank you.
is a park. There's also going to be public space in front of the building we're building at 34 Old Kings Highway South now. And then this is underground parking. These 2 buildings both have underground parking. So that excavation you see happening and the blasting that had to occur, that was to make way for the underground parking here. That underground parking is really just for the residents of that project and some of the employees. The pink spaces are the restaurant spaces, most likely. We've already leased basically all of this phase, and some of the tenants are moving, like Everything is Rosy, the Toy Box, and Helen Ainson are going to move to these locations. That's just what they preferred. Erica Jensen, who owns Helen Ainson, is probably, after the sports shop, the longest running merchant in Darien. And she's been an incredible supporter, so we kind of told her, you can have whatever space you want. You tell us what you want and we'll work it out. So she picked the primo space. This is a cool tenant that we signed a lease with, or we're about to sign a lease with, called Pastificio. And then there's another artisanal food provider that's going to go here. So this will be kind of a row of a couple of artisanal food places here. He's in Coscob right now. It's like an Italian market, and he has a commissary that he's building with us in Norwalk. This was supposed to be the post office. I'm sure that would be a question you guys will ask. Someone will ask, what's the deal with the post office? So I asked the post office for literally 10 years what should the post office of the 21st century look like? Like, how many square feet do you need? And understand that it's really, this is expensive land. And right now, or until recently, that site had the retail post office plus a sorting facility. And the truck, the mailmen would come in, pick up their trucks in the morning, load up, and then go do their deliveries. That function, the sorting and distribution, that's been relocated to Stamford. We didn't have the capacity to do that in this project, but we felt it was important that Darien not lose its post office. Also, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but like, people are super passionate about their post office. I don't know what it is about Americans generally, but like, as a developer, if you screw the post office up, you like are toast. It would be like, it would have been almost as bad as putting Chick-fil-A in the Shake Shack site. Someone who was here, someone who used to work in this space, he built the post office in New Canaan. And he told me, last time I was here, he was like, yeah, I copied your plans from 1020 Post and I did it in New Canaan. I put a post office.
Hey, David, would you just outline just the streets that are quote unquote new going in?
Sure.
I mean, we see Corbin and
Sure.
Post.
So this is a new street. This we're going to call Penny Lane, after my partner, Penny Glassmeyer. This is a new street. This is a parking area, but it will function like a street. And then this is all outdoor dining. This is a pedestrian walkway. We were required to, or we got approval to, improve the crosswalks here to the Sport Shop and Whole Foods. We have to improve the the crosswalk here, and we were asked to change the traffic light. And I have a feeling that's going to trigger then like retiming of the lights along the post road. And then actually something that everyone said we could not get done, we got permission from the DOT to put a crosswalk here mid-block. So the whole idea was like to really improve the pedestrian friendliness of Darien. Yes?
So where the Bank of America is now there, so you said something about the Italian markets. So where do you park?
So you park on the street. This is all that perpendicular. Well, here now there's no perpendicular parking. This is going to be perpendicular parking. This is perpendicular parking. This is parking. This is 340. I think it ended up 340 parking spaces in a garage. This is 80-something spaces on the surface. There's parking throughout. And then the idea also is that we're connecting it into here. We're going to move the Merrill Lynch and Cheswick people into the underground parking so that the area behind 1020 becomes open municipal parking. And so the idea is you'll park and you'll walk. Like, that's one of the things I've learned over the years doing this is that, if you don't have entertainment along the sidewalk as you walk, you're less inclined to walk. If you have unsafe conditions, you're much less inclined to walk. So if you don't feel comfortable, think about what the experience is right now walking along here. It's really terrible. You're either walking behind the cars, there's that like strip of concrete. You're kind of led to believe that's where you're supposed to walk, but when you actually do it, it's terrifying because people are backing out into the post road. Or you're walking along that sidewalk in front of the stores, and they were all built before like the ADA compliance rules. So now you've got these bumps and crazy things so people can get up there with a wheelchair. I mean, it's insane. So, there's a lot of improvements that are going to kind of happen along the streetscape here and here that I think are going to really, like, no one, I think, would you agree, like, no one would ever park over behind CVS today and walk to Bank of America. But I think that if it's a nice walk and there's beautiful stores and you're running into friends on the street and you feel safe because you're on a sidewalk and there's crosswalks, I think you'll walk there in a way that you would never have today or in years past. Yes?
Is the post road going to be one lane then now? Because in front of Bank of America, there's that lane to turn right.
The lane to turn right to go up Leroy?
Still on
Oh, to go up Corbin? No, that's going to stay that way. It's still 2 lanes. But we're pulling back from the street. So remember, we have perpendicular parking right now.
Right.
So that will become a lane, a better lane, and then the sidewalk. So it'll stay 2 lanes. We're moving the curb in.
Yeah, part of the issue I always find is that people get off 95 onto Route 1 to try to go faster going north. and many of them are not gonna turn right, they're in that right.
And then they
And they keep
cut
cutting
left.
in,
Yeah,
and
it's
so
annoying.
The left-hand lane is like
Yeah, it's
backing
so
up, and
annoying.
people can't get through the light, so
Yeah.
will there be a way to remedy some of that?
I don't think there's anything we can do to fix that, honestly. But, people have talked about, like, could you, because Waze has created incredible changes in how people drive. I don't know if you guys use Waze, but like some of the roads Waze will take you on, you kind of can't believe it. When we built Shake Shack, there was a woman who got up and went on and on and on and on and on about how much more traffic there was on Old Kings Highway South, which ran behind her house. She was sort of in between the Post Road and Old Kings Highway South toward St. Luke's. And I was listening to her, and I'm like, what on earth is she talking about? Like, why would there be any more traffic on Old Kings Highway South? And then I had an epiphany. I'm like, you know what? It's Waze. Because this was like early Waze days, like where, suddenly if there's traffic on the Post Road, it'll shoot you down a side street that you would not have driven down before. Like I grew up in Darien, I would have never driven down Old Kings Highway South to avoid the Post Road traffic.
David, could you discuss the differences between your first generation plan and this plan?
Oh, sure.
You had a village green that seemed very attractive.
Yeah, big green is great in the summer, and we all have visions of like kids throwing frisbees and people having fun and enjoying it. But like in the other months, it's going to be kind of empty, and it might be too big. And if there aren't enough people in it, it's not going to feel good. A small place like Grove Street Plaza, having like studied that really carefully, it's sort of intimate. It's got a good vibe because there's always, even if there's only 4 people in there, it doesn't feel empty. But a big space, if there's 4 people in it, will feel like unloved. It's kind of like walking by a Chinese restaurant or a restaurant that's empty. You're like, why is that empty? Like, I don't want to sit in there. I don't know if I want to eat that food. Like, there's something wrong. So we kind of retooled the whole thing, and working with Bruce Beinfield, came up with the idea of creating different public places that were each smaller, but in total bigger than the big green that we had originally put on the Post Road. And having kind of marketed this to the retail tenants also, the response has been much, much more positive. So people were nervous about, imagine like the town green way off the Post Road, and then you're in that important looking building that you have no ability to park in front of it. You've got to kind of park on the street and walk back or go into the 2-level underground parking. Honestly, the more we thought about it, the more confidence we lost in the viability of it. We're trying to be respectful of the past, but also a little forward looking. So, Bruce and we came up with this design, and he was the one who kind of encouraged us to focus on these buildings too, which I really think will ultimately make just a huge difference in how this all plays out. So let me show you a couple of images. Like that's the Post Road. This is a really rough kind of digitized rendering, but it's to scale. And so one of the other things that we're doing, which is really, really important, let me just go back for a second. We're totally obsessed with making these look like different buildings. It's much more expensive to build that way, but we're very focused on making it look like this happened over time with different architects and different owners or builders, and has different looks. So some of these buildings are brick, some of them are wood. This one's got almost like a mill kind of look to it. And I'll show you some different images just to give you a flavor. This is an image of the Post Road. So this would be kind of like where Morley is, with the stores on the first floor and the apartments above. This is looking down Corbin Drive from the Post Road. So that's actually the back of the gas station where Barrett Bookstore would go. So Barrett's going to move once across the street and then stay there. All these buildings also, like one of the bits of feedback that we've gotten over the years from apartment tenants that live in our other apartments downtown at Grove Street Plaza, 1020 or 745 Post Road, is that they really want outdoor space. So these buildings all have roof decks, like with private roof decks with barbecue and loungy space and like a place to just, enjoy outside while you're downtown.
So David, that's kind of like loft apartments?
Yes. Yep. And then like this is what I was saying. This is a new street that runs from Corbin Drive into the parking lot behind 1020. So this driveway basically ends up where Parlor Pizza is, or where Baldanza was. So people can come in and literally pull across, and there's crosswalks to get people by foot across safely. This is a tenant, a bakery that we've been talking to about one of the buildings on Corbin Drive. That's an image of a building that sits on Corbin Drive. So this is from Corbin Drive looking toward the Bank of America building. This is on the right, like the new street. So again, this is really rough. It's just meant to kind of give you an image of, like kind of a New England vibe, but then we're trying to give it a little bit of a modern touch for the tenant. This is a restaurant we've been working with for a while called the East Pole. They're two young guys from New York City. And this is on the side closer to the Post Road. So Chopped is on one side of that driveway, Penny Lane, or actually that's Market Street. This is on the other side of that driveway. So in this restaurant, actually, this is kind of a cool space. This restaurant actually also has a rooftop bar. So it's got a bar that's on the 3rd floor that you could access by elevator or stairs, like in the warmer months. And so they could do that, which will be kind of fun. This is the Post Road. This is a building that sits, on this pedestrian walkway in. So the idea is that there's more outdoor seating, landscaping, street trees. This is a restaurant. I don't know if anyone goes to Nantucket, but there's a restaurant, Millie's, in Nantucket. So they have restaurants in DC too.
I heard that.
Yeah.
But a different menu?
It's some of the same, and then more fish, more of a seafood orientation. Fun cocktails, like they're really fun. They're fun guys. We haven't figured out what we're doing there. We're talking to 3 different people about that space, but that's one that,
It's just if you hang out at Millie's on the Nantucket and you go to Millie's there, it's going to be like, no.
This isn't Millie's.
This is not Millie's.
Yeah.
That's my feeling.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, that's the thing. You don't know. Like Cisco Brewers opened in Stamford, but it's gangbusters.
I know.
I mean, maybe we're not there. I've only been once, but people love it.
They have,
It's very different from the Nuggets.
It's different.
and they're overdoing it. They're everywhere. They're in Boston. They're in
Cisco?
Cisco.
Yeah.
And it's not the same as.
Yeah.
what-
How could it be?
I
Right?
know,
How could it
but-
be?
But it's overkill.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, listen, it could be. Look, that's what we want. We want, because, well, we'll do a focus group here. So the choices,
I love that.
you like Millie's or no?
We go to Millie's all the time.
You do?
in the Kentucky.
So the other choices for that space at the moment are a very cool Spanish restaurant from the city called Boqueria, which I think is really neat, and it would be totally like of a different level. Also, we're talking to a group called True Food Kitchen.
Oh, they're in Florida.
Yeah,
I love that place.
it's good, right?
Yeah. I think that would be really well.
Yeah,
there.
and there's no True Food around here.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it, and I have friends who literally are like, they'll go twice a week.
Farm to table sort of, yeah. I think that would do really well.
But do you think it's a little corporate-y? Like, is it a little too
No, not
chainy?
at all. Not at all.
Okay, good. Okay, that's good to hear.
Not at all.
David, are you forming a restaurant selection?
Yes, this is the restaurant selection committee.
There's no focus group. I think that would be.
Well, yeah.
No, I think there's a lot of people here. We know that.
Yeah.
We know. the
I actually
information.
reached out to them because I wanted to bring them to Connecticut. They said no, they had
Yeah,
no interest
yeah.
at the time. This was a couple of years ago.
So what happened with them is they started to look at the mall in South Norwalk. The mall owner wanted them to go there, and the CEO came to visit and looked at the mall and looked at our project, and they dropped the mall. But what they've been struggling with is, as you may recall, they're pretty big restaurants.
They are, yeah.
So that is like their typical restaurant's like 8,000 feet. Our typical restaurant, 1020 Post by example, is like 3,600 feet upstairs and about 1,500 feet downstairs. So they'll call this a small format store, and we would be their first one. So they're trying to figure out how does that work. It's a little bit different a business when it's half the size. So yeah.
Just got a question. I'm curious whether you researched, concluded what portion of the customers would be coming from out of town versus in town. I mean, have you thought about that?
We do.
Type of
It's so hard to
analysis,
tell.
Like, gee, half of the people should be from out of town. Or...
So I would say this. I don't know if it's going to sound like a stupid answer, but we don't want restaurants. We're not trying to work with restaurants that are like all over the place around us. So I'm trying not to put like, I was intrigued by Le Penguin, for example. Like we loved Le Penguin. But there's 2 in Greenwich. There was 1 in Westport. Is that really, like, will someone from Greenwich come to Darien to Le Penguin? Probably not. We also, like, you want some people coming from out of town to support these things because you want them to thrive and you want the other businesses to do well too. If you're only catering to an 18,000 person market, you're not gonna make it. So the magic of a 1020 Post or some of these other restaurants is that they do draw from other towns. 1020 Post, we have this creepy data service that I subscribe to that allows me to literally track any store and see where the customers come from.
That's what I'm getting at.
They scrape your data, and I can actually track and I can see the times they visit, where else they shop, where else they eat. Like, it's a little crazy. It's called Placer AI. It's so crazy. I mean, literally, and it's powerful data because I can, like in meeting with LL Bean, I can talk to them about the business they're leaving on the table because REI is here, and what they're doing in Danbury, and you can literally show that like there is no overlap. Like, few people from Lower Fairfield County go to Danbury, or they do go to REI, but so it's going to be a balance. The honest answer is it's a balance. We want like mostly restaurants that aren't around here that Darien people will be psyched about, but other people will come visit too. Like Mecca Noodle is cool. Everybody loves Mecca Noodle, but now they're in Stamford, they're in South Norwalk. Does Darien really need a Mecca Noodle? I don't think so. But Nitnoy Provisions is this cool, like, artisanal noodle shop, and noodles and dumplings and Thai food in South Norwalk, and he's opening in Coscob, and he wants to open a small store with us. So we'll go for like the small, cool, locally owned shop versus, the thing that's gonna. True Food would draw people from all over the place because it'll be the only one if they did it with us. But yeah, it's a balance. I would try to really, and then by the way, also I should talk about this. Like, we're trying also to figure out exactly what the people from Federal Realty are doing, like up in Norotan Heights, that big project. And they're different settings entirely. Like, this is a downtown setting. It's like more of a walkable downtown setting. That's more of a shopping center with apartments above with big seas of parking in front. We haven't really lost any tenants to them that we wanted. We did lose one, Sweetgreen. I was kind of upset about it. I thought we had an agreement with Sweetgreen, but then Federal played the, we're a national company and we have 10 stores with you in other markets, and if you want to be in these 3, you got to take this one. So it is David versus Goliath a little bit in the leasing between them and us, but the downtown setting is very different, so most of the tenants that we work with are going to be very different. Yeah.
How else would you contrast those two projects?
I just think they're going to have a different vibe. Like, what we've seen so far is like they're signing leases with like a lot of the, like, what I'll characterize as like the private equity backed, businesses that, like, in technology, it's all about subscription models, like recurring revenue and subscription models. And so people are like, like whether it's Salesforce or Microsoft Word, like all the Microsoft products, right? It's all monthly subscription now. People are applying that concept to like nail salons, facial places, hair dye, hair coloring. So there's this whole new batch of things that are like subscription based. So it's like you pay $100 a month to get as many manicures as you want at Gloss Lab, and you pay $150 a month to have your hair colored as many times as you want. And I mean, you wake up and you like spend $500 each month on just this stuff, plus your gym membership. Like, number one, I don't live like that. I'm too frugal. I'm a little Yankee frugal, so I hate like recurring charges. But I don't think that's really, that's what they're doing. They're putting a lot of those kinds of tenants in there. I don't think that's really, I wouldn't do that. They signed a lease with Molto from Fairfield, and then they signed a lease supposedly with Oath, this other pizza place from Nantucket, actually, Oath Pizza. And they put it like 4 doors down. Like, I just wouldn't do that. So it's going to be interesting, but it is like, it's a little David versus Goliath. So it's kind of fun. I like the challenge, but it's been interesting. Yeah.
Switch gears to apartments. Are they going to be all rental units? Are you going to sell them?
The original plan, to be totally candid, was to sell pretty much everything, because we kind of had to make the math work with the 2 levels of underground parking. By simplifying our parking and kind of getting our costs better under control with the design, we're not forced to do that, which makes it a much less risky project. And then, candidly, I also had another epiphany one night. I'm like, who of you would want to be the first person to buy a condominium if there are 116 available? Nobody really wants to be the first one to jump into that pool because you don't have confidence in the depth of the market. And honestly, I couldn't get my head around how deep would the market be. 20 years ago when I started working on this, the idea that someone of my age or older than me would be a renter by choice, I would never have believed anyone 50 or above would be a renter by choice. But I think that Connecticut, whether it's like people's concerns about estate tax and the state tax situation or financial health as a whole, people started thinking more about establishing residency in other states, but then they don't want to lose touch with their community. So the pattern in Darien, right, has often been raise your family here, kids leave the house, now you want a smaller house, downsize, sell the big house or the bigger house, downsize in Rowayton, or get a condo in Darien, or maybe in New Canaan where there were more choices, they were a little larger. Darien didn't allow condo building as they weren't as welcoming to the idea of condo development in the 80s as New Canaan was. So our condos, they were so afraid that people would buy a condo to, get into the school system at a lower price point, they held the square footages down. So there was no such thing as a 2,000-foot condo. So but what's happened is people, you may know people who've done this, people have actually bought 2 condos next to each other and combined them. So we always say, if we don't offer the market what it wants, the market's going to figure out a way to either give us what it wants, which might be a lower rent, or, if we didn't get the project right, or it's going to buy 2 units and combine them and make a 2-bedroom or 3 or 4-bedroom condominium. So I think that this building will probably sell as condos, so that'll be like 8 or 10 units. And then honestly, the answer is we're going to just see how it goes. We're set up to do it. We're not building them at a different quality. Sometimes developers build the rental units at a different quality than the condo units. We're not doing that. We're building them at the same quality. But if someone comes in and says, I want to customize my unit, I want to do things totally differently, we'll figure that out. But we're actually meeting Compass tomorrow, I think, to start talking about that. 116. Yeah, so actually that's one of the greatest parts of the... Yes, yeah. That's one of the greatest aspects, too, of this project that, for me, has been, honestly, probably the most rewarding part of this was, working with Bob, and actually Lou Smith was the one who really helped us in the very beginning. We knew we had to build affordable housing. We knew there was always, it wasn't a part of the deal when we first started assembling the land, but the town incorporated inclusionary zoning when, in 5 or 6 years ago. So that kind of happened upon us. The town law basically says, or zoning regulation says, that 12% of whatever units you build, if you build more than 6 units, have to be affordable. Affordable to someone making 80% or less of state median income. So I sort of was looking at it, and Fred Conzi, who was a former chairman of zoning, would always say to me, think about broad implications. Think about this as an asset. If you were an asset manager for the town, what would you do? What would be the best thing that you could do? I had an idea once to do a multifamily project on the Tokenique Road. And Fred said to me, how would you feel if that idea was replicated all the way down Tokenique Road? Would you feel that you had done a good thing as a resident of this town? And I said, no, I wouldn't. He says, then there's your answer. Don't do it. Don't bring that to my commission. So I didn't.
But the interesting thing is, what is affordable when you have the income level that you do in Darien?
Well, the state dictates it.
Okay.
So it's basically about $60,000 a year. So it's not low income housing,
Okay.
but it's lower income than the average in this area. So we were looking at the whole picture and we're like, okay, so the Federal Realty project, which is underway now, is happening. They're going to do just the easiest thing they can, which is put it on site. Palmer's were going to do a project. They were going to do it on site. The town had doubled out Old Town Hall Homes, which was the senior affordable project past Starbucks, because they were, they had exterior staircases. It was really a flawed project. So they've done a good job. They doubled the count there for seniors. And then Allen O'Neill up in Norotan Heights got doubled. So talking to Bob, I said, I have a lot of friends who have children with disabilities. There's only one group home in Darien with 6 beds for, young adults or adults with disabilities, which was built privately by the Gogolaks and the Milnes, why don't we do something for that population? It's a growing population in this town, in all towns. So we came up with this idea. So we bought a cool, random property. It had been zoned for a nursery school. There was actually a Montessori school on the site and then a single family house. And the school was licensed to take 80 kids at a time. So we looked at it and said, that's like a needle in a haystack, because 12 units of housing here will generate a lot less traffic than 80 students in a nursery school with them. It could go 2 shifts, 3 shifts a day, in and out. So we presented that idea to the town and they really liked it. And so we actually just finished constructing that, and we've just given it, we donated it to the charity Ableist that is going to run it.
I think it's awesome.
It's the best thing I ever did.
Kudos to you.
I wish I had this picture. We took a lot of the potential residents by recently, and basically what it is it's 12 efficiency apartments in 2 buildings that look like single-family homes. So they literally look exactly like a single-family house that might get built in Darien today. But in there are 3 efficiency apartments on each floor and then a common area. So it's perfect for someone who, wants privacy, wants independence, but then might want to be social at times, or maybe all the time. But it's like they have a choice. Like all these new apartments that are being built now, you've probably seen. A lot of them have a lot of amenity space. We didn't go quite that far. Like I wish we did more community gathering space, more amenity space, because I think that's the only mistake I think we made with it. Like it would have been better if there was more gathering space, but we were trying to be respectful also of the residential neighborhood it's in. So we didn't want the houses to get too big. So they're like 4,500 feet. They're good size, but they're not totally oversized.
And where is it?
On East Lane, so off of Old Kings Highway North. If you go behind Trader Joe's, down Old Kings Highway North and take a left right after the highway on East Lane, it's right there. And Ableist has been, managing these homes for years, and it's just an awesome organization. And, they've been great to work with, like just incredible to work with. Is that right?
Did that cover your?
Keatings?
Oh yeah, yeah.
John,
Yeah, I took them on a tour recently. It's awesome. Huh? It's the best.
love Catherine.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
that's,
I grew up with Barbara.
yeah, it's a blessing.
Yeah. So when we got to do this, I called my partner Ward Glassmeyer and I'm like, you got to come with me on a tour. We're taking one of our classmates on a tour with her daughter, and you have to come because, these folks often don't know where their son or daughter is going to live. So it's pretty amazing. So I laugh also, like I probably said to Bob the other day, like we worry about, are we going to put a sushi restaurant or a Chinese food place or like, Millie's or True Food Kitchen? And then you touch on that and you're like, does the rest of this really matter that much? Like it all seems a little silly. But,
David, what are the completion dates for these various phases?
okay, so we're going as fast as we can to get this up and done by the end of next year. So we can relocate Bank of America and the others. We can relocate the retail people and then still be working on the apartments and start phase 2. I want to be done by the end of 2023. That's an ambitious goal.
With everything?
Yeah,
everything by
yeah, that's an ambitious goal. I think it's probably more like the first quarter of 24, but you guys are going to have a front row seat. So you'll see what we're doing. And what we are doing, because we've discovered that people are really intrigued by what's going on and they want to know. Like everybody's so passionate about this community. So one of the things we're going to do, we do have an active social media presence, which you can go on Instagram or Facebook. We have the Corbin District, we call it. We're very active. We post, we support the restaurants and the retail through there. We also have been giving updates, construction updates on there. But we're going to add a construction update section to our website, which is the Corbin District. And every week we're going to just put a little bit of an update because we do recognize this is impactful, not necessarily in a perfect way. And we think we have a good plan. We took down all the buildings in the back here. You probably saw during COVID. We took down all those buildings in behind the post office. Right now there's the biggest pile of dirt you've probably ever seen. So we're kind of working from there, hoping not to have a terrible impact on, this parking lot and kind of what's going on while we do it. We did lose some parking for Old Kings Highway South and 1020 in this phase, but that'll come back soon. And so, when we go over here, it's going to be definitely a little trickier because this whole site is getting excavated. But we picked an awesome team. I don't know if Peter's still here, but Mark Bothwell, who's with FGB, the owner of FGB Construction, Darien resident.
Where
He's
will you move the post office then?
so that's a lease,
Yes.
which we're going to terminate.
Yes.
But they're relocating to another downtown location. I can't say what it is, but they'll announce it soon. But it's a perfect location, plenty of parking and.
Darien Sport Shop will remain where it is?
Oh yeah.
And 1020 will remain?
Remain where it is, exactly. Yeah, no problem. Yes, Joe.
David, you're a visionary developer, and I think what you're doing here is going to transform our town in a very nice, low-key way, so that we don't become a Westport or a New Canaan. And I think that's terrific. But you do a lot of other stuff, which is very nice, and you never stand up and take credit for it. For example, I was involved with a church in Darien that was doing a renovation, and it got stuck for a whole lot of reasons. Stubbornness on the part of too many people, and you came in low-key, took it over, got it done, the job is finished, but it wouldn't have happened without you. And when I look at some of the people whose businesses you have relocated, there was a shoemaker, for example, who
Love it, Papa Joe's.
who was behind the post office. And I talked to the guy who I know there, and I said, how did you end up with such a good location? He said, David Genovese. And then I talked to a couple of other people, just by chance, who had business interests here that you had helped. And they said, I said, how did it happen? And they said, David Genovese.
Yeah.
And that you talk about your projects, and a couple you did with Penny.
Yeah.
And I think naming Penny Drive is a very nice touch.
Penny Lane, right?
Touch on your part. But you don't get credit for all the nice stuff you do for no reward and no publicity, and you don't stand up and say, look at me, what I'm doing. So I just like to say thank you. I think that's terrific.
Oh, you're kind. Thank you so much. Yeah, look, I mean, I grew up here, so it's not just about money. You know, it's like we're trying to do the right thing. And I kind of look at it and say to my kids all the time, like, anybody can build a building, you know, but getting it right, like everyone on my team laughed because they thought I was crazy with Spiro, the cobbler, because, you know, you can't hire a broker to help you do that. It's a 300 square foot lease. Like, nobody's going to care. But to me, like, that was important. Like, the devil's in the details. And like, he's over by Papa Joe's. So funny story about that. He's just this old school, you know, Greek guy, right? He's by the Allstate office. Yeah, it was a Tasty Freeze ice cream thing before. So I take him, I was so excited when I had the idea. And I'm like, Spiro, this is going to be great. Trust me, it's going to be great. I can't wait to show you this space. He's like, oh, I don't want to move. I don't want to move. I'm like, we got to like do it. He's a total grump, right? So I said, you got to come with me to go check this out. So he gets in the car. We meet him up there. He's like, I don't know. I said, Spiro, like, literally think about it. Everybody loves you. Like, everybody. Like, people would always ask me, what are you going to do about Spiro? What are you going to do with Giovanni the tailor and the dog groomer? And I said, Spiro, this is going to be great. And you got this sign on the post road that you've never had. Like, your business is going to go up. Like, Gopher business went up. Barrett Bookstore business went up. And he looked at me and he goes, oh, I don't want that. He's like, I'm like, you're the only business person I've ever met that doesn't want more. Like, he's like, I'm good just the way I am. So, now, you know, we also, like, I feel like, you know, I was an investment banker before I started doing this, so I knew literally nothing about any of this. Bob taught me all the zoning. My dad taught me a lot about building, and the team I've assembled an awesome team. So I do get too much credit for the building stuff because I am good at hiring good people, and I have an awesome team at Baywater that's even gotten bigger and better. Not too big, but like better. And, you know, like, we have a unique ability to, not unique, but rare ability to like add value to some of these efforts, like the YMCA or St. Thomas More. And then when COVID hit, you know, we started the Corbin Cares. Janet King, you know, people in your group here, Janet King with the community fund helped us. And, you know, we came up with this idea through a friend, through Katie Stein. Her sister had raised money privately to support restaurants in LA that she liked. And the restaurant, she would raise money from friends and buy food and then bring it to the hospital and serve the frontline hospital workers. So we came up with that. We were like, maybe we could do that, but we'll make it a little more professional. And so we started Corbin Cares, which you can read about on our website. And we raised like $250,000. And we were able to buy meals from all these local restaurants and then deliver them to the senior center. They had lunches every day because the senior center was closed. The hospital, Norwalk Hospital, Stanford Hospital, Bridgeport Rescue Mission. And you know, what I always say about that is, like, we had Katie's sister actually had the idea. We just repackaged it and then executed it and took responsibility. We were a conduit. Like, people in this town want to do good, but sometimes they don't know how to do it. So if you can kind of mark out a path and say, here's a path, follow me, you know, I've always been blown away by the generosity of the community here, and, like, for the right ideas, what people will do. And it's pretty great. It's great to be a part of that. I feel super privileged. I feel super stressed. So if you see me in the street sometimes and I'm, like, not, like, all that friendly, it's like, this is stressful work, especially in moments like this where you're coordinating so many people and there's so many moving parts. But honestly, it's a privilege. It's like a privilege to get to do this because it's like the town I grew up in and I love, and I know all these people, and I get to help make a friend's life a little better. Like, what's better than that? So that's kind of my story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
And thank you all for coming. This is very informative. I knew most of it, but we thought it'd be better-
most of it.
it'd be better if you heard it directly from David. But thank you, and in the future, we'll have some more of these lunches now that things are starting to loosen up. We hope you think this is a good idea.
Oh, yeah.
Great idea.
Thank you very much. So, David.